Ladies and gentlemen, my friends, beg pardon, manners.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Animation Pilgrimage, the show where we watch every single theatrically released animated film in chronological order. I'm Sean.
I'm Tennille, and we're going back in time.
Back in time! We're back in 1952 of all years, just because that was so long ago. Either way, we are back here and we are watching The Curious Adventures of Mr. Wonderbird.
First thing I gotta say, wow.
Holy shit, is this animation good?
Okay, usually going back in time is not one of my favorite things about Animation Pilgrimage. I prefer moving forward in the project. It makes me happy to feel like we're progressing. It makes me feel really bad when we have to go back and get something. But I am so happy we came back to watch this film because holy crap, this is another one of those gems. And I had never heard of it before. And wow, does it have a huge history behind it too, which makes me super happy because I love history, I love animation history. That's what this project is about. So holy cow, this film just had everything to offer, and then we'll continue offering more.
In the future. Spoilers.
Yeah.
So this is The Curious Adventures of Mr. Wonderbird. This is from France, 1952. I didn't see what the actual production company was, if there really was one.
I didn't see really a company that went along with it, but it is directed by Paul Grimault. He's a famous French animator, probably one of the most influential French animators
Of this time in like the early years.
Just in general.
Cool.
He's mostly known for his short films, though, and for this project. Because this is a project.
That goes on for a while.
Yes. The version of this film that we watched, because there are multiple releases of this film, is the 1952 version. We did actually watch the 1952 version, which is something I was a little nervous about going into this, because when we first heard about this and were given it, we were told that it has another release in 1980. Because this film was released prematurely in 1952 in its its unfinished form. This was not the form that Grimault wanted it to be, but his producer, André Sarraute, released it early, uncompleted, and honestly, from watching it, you wouldn't really be able to tell that it was uncompleted.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a few spots where it feels like we're missing a scene or something, but it still was amazing.
Yeah, for a 1952 film?
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, this was amazing. For context, because we're reviewing this so far in the future, currently in Animation Pilgrimage, we just wrapped up 1974. This is released between the times of Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan.
From Disney.
Yeah.
Those films came out the year before and the year after this film.
And honestly, this is up there.
Animation-wise, yes.
Absolutely. Story-wise, I think it's a little unpolished, but I think that mostly comes from the fact that it was released unfinished.
Yeah. What I feel about this film is it doesn't necessarily focus a lot on the story or any sort of audio or anything like that. The entire focus of this film was perfecting the animation itself and making it look as good as they could. They do not cut budget. They do not do limited animation anywhere in this film.
Absolutely not. It is pretty stunning. They do reuse animation a couple of times, but that's closer to the end.
It's ridiculous.
This was stunning. It's only 62 minutes long, this original version, and I'm going to say, we're just starting this review, but I'm just going to say I highly recommend everybody go watch this film. It's in the public domain, so it is free to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Go watch it. Make sure that it's the 62-minute version. And then, because I just think this will be really fun. Then, when Sean and I get to 1980, go watch the 1980 release as well. And then, like, we're all on the same page and we'll all have watched this. And it's so interesting because it's like, it's a piece of history that has evolved over time.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. We get a few films that are like that. Obviously, there's some infamous cases like The Thief and the Cobbler. We've already talked on Animation Pilgrimage how we'll be seeing a remake of The Humpbacked Horse from Russia. But, like, these cases where a film was released prematurely, was still a great film, and then later gets a better, closer to what the original
intent was
released. Like, that's so cool.
Now, the real question we'll have to ask ourselves when we start watching these remakes, was the remake worth it?
Yeah.
Like, was enough changed? Was it, like, did it need to be re-released?
Right. So, obviously, we haven't watched the 1980s version yet, so
Correct.
we can't say anything about that as of now. But I do want to clarify that for this film, it's not that it was then, because I think when you hear that, like, oh, this was released in 1952 and then got a later release in 1980, all that time in between there wasn't time being spent working on this film. You know, if you actually look at the history of this, it was released in 1952. Grimault was not happy about it, but he didn't get the rights back to the movie until 1967.
Wow. That's 25 years later?
No.
52 to 67. 15.
Yeah.
15 years later.
15 years later. And then he worked on trying to rehire a lot of his original animators back and all of that, and getting financing to work on the film. And it wasn't really until 1977 that he got all those funds to actually begin reproduction on the film. And then it was released in 1980. So all that time in between there was a battle for the film to get it finished, to get it completed. But work wasn't actually being done on it until, 77, 78, 79, and then finally released in 1980.
Okay. Interesting to know.
Yeah.
Anyways, want to do a plot synopsis of this film?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. So, this is the story of a king who rules an entire town all by himself. He's very conceited, only likes himself pretty much, but he really, really likes the painting of a shepherdess that he has in his house. So he goes to sleep one night, and the shepherdess comes to life, along with the chimney sweep boy.
From another painting.
From another painting right next to it. And then also a painting of himself that he painted comes to life. The painting of himself also really loves the shepherdess. The shepherdess and the chimney sweep escape.
They're in love.
They're in love, of course. They're the young love couple of the movie. The painting king gets rid of the real king.
Yeah. Like I said, the story here is not
The greatest.
polished. Like, there's a lot of things that could be, like, cut, but also an important thing to keep in mind before we go too far into this is this is also based on a Hans Christian Andersen story.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, called The Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep.
Okay.
And that was the original name of this film, too, which I think...
It gets re-released as that name eventually.
Well,
I think.
No, that was its name originally, and then it changed names to the King and the Bird and the Mockingbird.
The King and the Mockingbird.
Which I think is the French name for it, if you were to more directly translate it.
Okay.
And then for some reason here in America, it is translated to The Curious Adventures of Mr. Wonderbird, which is a mouthful of a title.
Yeah.
Continue.
Anyways, so the painting king gets his secret police, guard people to hunt down the runaways. So they run away, hijinks ensue. They are helped by the Wonder Bird or the Mockingbird. In this movie, the English version calls him the Wonder Bird. Mm-hmm. I don't know how accurate that is, but
I'm guessing it's Mockingbird.
Yeah. So he helps them, gives them information that they need to escape and survive. Eventually, the king gets a giant robot.
Yeah.
Wrecks an underground town.
Holy cow, the giant robot.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about it in a bit.
Oh my god!
He eventually captures them. He's going to marry the shepherdess, but the Mockingbird convinces a pack of lions, along with a couple of tigers and a bear.
Well, don't forget the blind man.
Oh yeah, there's a blind musician guy that has like a music box and stuff. They all work together to get to the top of the town again. They save the shepherdess. The Mockingbird uses the robot to destroy the town and blows the king away. And the shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep get married. The end.
Happily ever after.
Happily ever after.
Yeah.
By God, this story is a little silly, but that's not the point.
Yeah, the point is the animation. Holy cow! Okay. You know how when we watched... Okay, wait. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, you know how when we watched Horus, Prince of the Sun?
Yep.
We're like, holy shit, suddenly Miyazaki.
Yep.
This film is noted as a big inspiration to Miyazaki.
Yes!
Yes. Both Miyazaki and Isao Takahata, who created Studio Ghibli.
Where is it? Okay. Isao Takahata.
Yeah. But both of them say that this is a movie that really inspired them. And
They're like big budget animation. Like actual animation.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my god.
I mean, just like looking at this film, you can see the inspiration, the giant robot, the
attention to detail.
The attention to detail, yeah.
Like,
the
characters move and they don't cut the animation. It's, no, if something takes this much time, you use every single frame to do that task. You don't blur effect in there over there, a blur effect back, and they don't just stand there and, like, flap their mouth for talking or anything, which are, like, common practices in television and, like, most Japanese animation at this point.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's so interesting to get this piece of the puzzle because, and I do consider it a puzzle, because animation is an art form that has evolved from watching other animators over decades and decades of work.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, even back in the ye olden days, where, you know, communication was difficult, like more difficult between different countries than it is now. It is so interesting to see how this art medium has influenced people from all over the world. You know, Prince Ahmed inspired, you know, countless creations in Europe and in America, and Snow White inspired people all over the world to do traditional animation.
Like, hell, Snow White, and more importantly, Bambi, inspired Osamu Tezuka to really start anime as a thing.
Yeah.
Like, he was inspired by Disney, and Disney was inspired by, like, other people, and, like, it just keeps compounding.
Russia and the Snow Queen, like, inspired just, like, this different take on how to do fairy tales. And that goes back to Japan, and then, like, you know, I think not necessarily now, but like later on, we're gonna see
like
how
in the 60s, like
yeah, we're
Japan
gonna see how
and
Japan
Russia just like
influence us, and
man.
and now like we have this film from France, and like France is especially nowadays we think of France as like a pretty big
animation hub.
yeah, especially like a more artsy side of animation, I feel, and. You know, and now seeing like this I believe is like their stand, like this is their stamp on history right here of animation history. And now we see how it has also influenced Japan, and it's so cool. It's so cool how even though there's that communication barrier, back then, everyone can understand the medium of animation
because
and it
it's
speaks
motion
to people, and it's motion. Yeah, it's
you don't
so
need
cool.
words for this.
It's so cool. I mean, obviously, it got translated to the different countries, and like in that sense, like yes, this was made possible due to people like showing this. But like, it's cool. It's cool. It's so cool. That's why I love animation.
The animation is crazy good all over the place. Like, there is beautiful shots of, like, the lions. Just all of the lions. They don't, like, they do repeat animation here quite a bit, but it's crowd shots of lions doing lots of different stuff.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Just the king. Whenever the king moves, it's very subtle and very much so him.
The character animation is...
It is so
yummy.
Good. The bird himself is glorious to watch.
Yeah.
He's mesmerizing whenever he does anything.
He's got these beautiful feathers that he fans out all the time, and it just moves so elegantly.
No character in this movie feels like they go off model. Ever. Or if they do, it's so rarely, it doesn't even matter.
I will say my one gripe is the chimney sweep and the shepherdess.
Oh, they're really boring.
They're super boring. I don't necessarily think they go off model, but like...
Their model isn't great to begin with.
Their character models aren't great to begin with. And it's a shame because everything else really like all the other character designs in this movie really pop and really stand out. And just look great. This movie has a very, even though I think it's of the quality of films coming out in the 50s and even like way above most of the films coming out in the 50s.
Yes.
It has a very 40s animation aesthetic.
Yeah, I mean...
The character design is 40s animation. It's that Fleischer Brothers. It's that early Disney rubber hose, but like slightly, it's that evolution from rubber hose, but before it gets stylized by the time we hit the late 50s.
Yeah, it's like when it honestly, a lot of the extra characters feel like they're straight out of like a Popeye
short. Yeah.
Popeye short, where everyone feels very bubbly and cartoony, but they still move in a fairly realistic sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what it is. They're less rubber hose and more bubbles.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's often how I think of this style of animation.
And that's fitting because production for this film
started at that time.
I started, I think, in the early 40s.
That doesn't surprise me.
Which is why
all the characters
it got released before it was done in 52 because it was already a massive time and money sink.
I can believe it.
And yeah, and the producer was like,
all right, we're done.
We're
shipping it.
Yeah. Woof.
I also want to bring up this giant robot.
It is so cool.
There is one shot in particular that like...
There's a couple of shots.
That just like make my eyes bleed tears of joy.
Ooh, that is yummy.
Like, they do a camera rotation on this robot where it has 5 fingered hands with all of the digits and all of the joints.
And characters on top of his hands.
On his hands. And it turns the camera and keeps it completely on model.
It is
and the background
flawless.
shifts around. It's just like, whoa.
It is flawless. It is like, you see that and you just go, it like takes your breath away.
Mm-hmm. I was floored by that shot in particular. The animation was good up until this point, and then it's just like, okay, they win.
You
win.
You're
good.
me.
And of course, there are definitely spots where like animation flickers and like they forgot to put a cell on in particular spots. Like the front half of a lioness disappears, or like the birds disappear briefly, or stuff like that.
Yeah, there are certainly, this is no perfected masterpiece. You know, this is amazing for the time it came out. And I would say it's still impressive even to this day. But you can see the unpolished parts. You can see the times where frames drop or cells just suddenly disappear. And that is definitely because it was suddenly released without getting that cleanup phase. But holy cow. Yeah, this was just amazing. And obviously we'll be talking about this film again when we hit 1980 and we watch this movie again, but the finished version. And if you're worried that our review for that movie will be very similar to this one,
Don't worry.
I do want to say that I did enough research that I know that the 1980 version only uses about 42 minutes of this film, and then adds about another 45 minutes of new animation.
So they cut 20 minutes and then add like 45 minutes on top of that. So it's
new animation.
So it's going to be wildly different.
And I'm also excited to see the 1980s version because I feel like the quality, the video quality itself will also be better.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because that was another thing that was a slight. We knew that this was a 1952 film because the video quality was not great.
Mm-hmm. It hasn't been held up.
Yeah, it's a little grainy. It's a little hard to see, but it's still spectacular. I still highly recommend people go watch this one.
100%. Please go watch this.
Yeah.
Before we finish here, I do want to say thank you to Cockatiel Pony for finding this movie for us.
Yeah, because even though it's in the public domain, for whatever reason, we couldn't find it.
It might be because this movie goes under like 7 different names, and we were searching for one and didn't find that one, so we just moved on.
Yeah.
But thank you, Cockatiel Pony, for finding this for us, and like, oh my god, this was amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. And with that, I think that'll wrap up this review, which means that we get to move on to one more wrap-up movie before we move on to present day, wherever we are. We are
75.
We're moving on to 75. But before we do that, we have one 1972 film
that we missed.
I don't even know how we missed it. We just forgot to put it on the list.
Oh.
But someone found it for us, realized it wasn't on the list. And we will be watching Tintin and the Lake of Sharks.
I hope he gets eaten.
Wow. That's mean. See you guys then.
An innocent shepherdess was minding her sheep. And for whom was she minding these fine sheep? Ah, not for herself, but for